Incremental Improvement, Part 24. The problem is evidence. Yes, I had Blacklash's contracts, and if it went well, Beth, but that was sort of the end of my ability to prove things. Tim had come forward to me, but he was in a mental hospital, so getting his testimony blocked or tossed was a problem point on my end. The technical law states that he can still give testimony, but the difference between what is technical and what actually is the case in front of a jury isn't a small gap. People had been convicted on little to no evidence before, wrong evidence, biased juries, judges, underfunded public defenders. The reverse was also certainly true, that people who had committed the crimes they were accused of got let off the hook. If it were like it was supposed to be, there wouldn't be all these various pro bono legal groups out there around the globe. Things don't exist within a society that don't have a reason to exist within society, regardless of whether that reason is right or wrong. This involved the federal government, who would run any proceeding, and I couldn't just haphazardly jump around the internet looking for whatever, because there's no way they're not looking for keyword searches. Individual clauses in a contract? That's essentially fine. Even lawyers do that, because unlike what law shows would have you believe, lawyers don't really just know every clause of a contract and what it specifically means. They have paralegals that help research things like precedent, procedures, and more, as well as searching themselves. They're still experts, don't get me wrong, and they have to do a ton of work to get there. But there are limits, man. Well, for them. Me, less so. Getting Beth with us was one key aspect, since she could act as witness to finding the contracts and what they contained. But this was a government issue. One contract and one person wasn't going to be anywhere near enough to move the needle. I needed more. The oldest heroes currently in the game were 24, such as Anna, who'd had time to go to college. Beth and Blacklash got married right as Beth was finishing college, and Blacklash had died at 22 years old. As I thought about it, it made sense it hadn't been worked out yet. Most people didn't understand the first thing about the actual contracts, since the heroes themselves were getting contracted at the start of high school, and the vast majority of parents weren't lawyers themselves. Plenty of kids were coming out of college with massive debts because they didn't understand how the loans worked until after they finished school and had no wealth of experience to understand. The HAA offered free legal services for starting enhanced, and most of the country couldn't afford a $500 emergency, so they wouldn't have the necessary funds or time to devote to searching for a lawyer outside the system. Groups like the ACLU could help, but again, if I pop off early, if I don't get enough evidence to force the issue, then the government can drag this out pretty much as long as it wants, and nothing really changes. I needed more evidence. Maybe Blacklash's old team? Problem was, they weren't a known quantity, so not precisely sure how to approach them. I'd need to think about it more, figure out how to approach them. Dad ate his way through Atlanta. Fried catfish, sweet tea, fried chicken, peach cobbler. It was like he was trying to hit every section of a buffet right before closing. I was sworn to secrecy, since Mum was insistent on him eating healthy. I decided to play along in my own way.
You will owe me for this discretion, and one day I will collect on this debt that you have incurred.
In my best mob boss voice. I texted ahead of the meeting.
Hi, Beth, this is Marcus, and I just want to confirm the interview for today and to ask about where the best place to go have lunch is, since we're new to, well, anywhere not the West Coast.
A few minutes later, Beth texted back, confirming the interview and gave me the name of a place. Twisted Soul Cookhouse and Paws, which on looking seemed like it had a pretty interesting menu. I let Dad know, and we drove on over. Being Portlanders, the concept that Dad was having a local beer during lunch wasn't really uncommon. Half the businesses in Portland fell under the heading, "Is
X and a bar."
No, seriously, want to get used records and a drink? Bar Carlo. Picked up the newest Magic the Gathering release? Grab a drink at Guardian Games. Paddleboat River Tour? Brew Barge PDX. There was the Barcade Ground Control. The list went on, and if it didn't contain a bar directly, there was a place within about a block of it, whether bar or food truck. The place was nice, and we got settled in, Dad breaking out his laptop, and I had my papers with me. Beth signaled that she was here, and I waved to her as she stepped inside. She waved back.
Hi, y'all must be related. I'm Beth. Welcome to Atlanta.
We stood as she walked up. There were handshakes all around, and we had a seat. I'd placed Beth at about 25. I didn't say much at first, letting Dad take point on the interview after we placed orders.
So Beth, McKenna Solutions is looking to hire on. Specifically, we're looking for someone to head up our human resources division for our nonprofit work. Have you had a chance to look over the information I sent you?
She passed my dad a couple of pieces of paper, which I figured were her CV. I focused on eating and getting a read on her. Dad went through the usual interview process, asking questions about whether she was willing to commit to the move and how long she would need. He went over the salary, benefits, listed some good schools, but while she was answering capably, I did notice her eyes kept drifting slightly. Subtly, she kept glancing at my right arm. I'd brought Reva with me, although it had objected somewhat vigorously at having to be in checked bags. I had to explain that trying to walk through airport metal detectors was going to be a problem if I was wearing armor.
Ms. Beth, did you want to see it, or is this making you uncomfortable?
Reva was under the sleeve, and normally I wouldn't have brought it to meet her. But at the same time, I was still sort of confirming. Most people didn't really have much reaction to Reva, if they even saw it. I wore a lot of long-sleeve shirts, just like now, so you had to know it was there. As well, if she was going to be working with us, I was kind of inextricably linked to Reva for the moment, and it was best gotten out of the way. Beth took a moment.
Can you make it do the tendrils?
I didn't want to make a scene, so I brought the tendrils out a short ways, just enough for her to see them. Beth's breath stuttered, and I retracted them.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how much this must have hurt you, but I know it has to hurt.
Yeah, it does, but it's good too. I reckon that means that something of her time as a hero is still with us. Just make sure it matters.
She teared up a slight bit, but got it under control. She'd had time with the pain. I looked at my dad, and he gave me the nod.
Beth, we're undertaking a project to fix the homelessness situation in Portland, my hometown. The job is fully legitimate, and from what we've already seen, the interview is mostly a formality. I didn't go to the academy, and I don't work with or for the Hey. Well,
On Hey, her eyes narrowed, and the tears dead stopped. I'd hit the sore spot, but there wasn't really a way around the talk.
I did that because I didn't really want superpowers. I didn't want to be a hero, and I still don't. At least not in the way they mean it. I want to use my ability to help, but video to the contrary, I don't like fighting. I found the contracts, and I need to confirm if they're real.
I pulled the stack of papers out of my backpack and passed them to her. She looked over them and nodded.
Yeah, this is it. Well, a copy at least. I've still got the originals.
Originals would be better than the copies I'd printed out.
Look, right now I've got this, your story, and one guy who was trapped under Reaver for 2 years, and he's got pretty severe trauma from it.
Jesus.
She stared at the papers in front of her.
Yeah, my wife kept a journal on her computer, mostly just general life and superhero stuff, but she did talk about stuff like the morality clause and whatnot. It's not much.
I nodded.
I wouldn't even know about this if I hadn't searched for it, and if you hadn't posted it online, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Now that I've seen it, this is wrong. I can't just leave it like this, but as long as you're being held to the contracts, it puts things in a bind. I know you've got no real reason to trust me, but I need a full accounting of everything that she still owes to the HIA, so I can pay it off. I'm doing that whether you want to help us or not.
She just sat there for a moment, blinking.
I don't understand why you care.
I laughed, and I knew she wouldn't get the reference, but it was too good to pass up.
Because somebody should.
Dad cut in.
Don't look at me. He gets that shit from his mother.
She looked at the table for the moment, struggling to remember something, and broke out into laughter, and she was tearing up again.
Oh my god, Unlimited Blade Works, right? Jenna loved that series.
Okay, or maybe she will get the reference. Dad glanced at me.
Anime?
I nodded, smiling.
Yeah, it's a great anime. She watched?
The server came by, dropping off food, as Beth kept going.
She had the Crunchyroll. God, Jenna watched the worst stuff on there. I mean, don't get wrong or nothing, she had a bunch that were really great, but the other end, good God in his high chair, they were awful.
We were all laughing now, though Dad wasn't quite with us on the anime thing.
Yeah, me and my buddy call it ADD anime dumpster diving. We find the stuff that's so terrible, it wraps right back around to being awesome. Because, like, whole teams of people had to get it approved. There were animators, voice actors, and everyone just somehow kept going. Yeah, that's the stuff.
We had lunch, and Beth and Dad talked more. I got distracted texting with Amy for a bit. I'd been sending her pictures of Atlanta, and she was talking about her and her friends were going out to a movie. Her dad was acting as chaperone, and I felt for him. Love Amy, but her friends could be a lot, especially as a Gru. I love Amy. I just sort of stopped thinking when that caught up with me. I missed the rest of the time there, and we were on the road again before I got snapped out of it by Dad thumping my ear.
You there?
I shook my head to see we were head south out of Atlanta.
Not as much as I'd have liked. What'd I miss?
He shook his head.
Well, it'd be nice if I had directions for one.
Oh, right, so I hopped on the phone and got directions going. A little bit later, Dad nudged at me.
So what's got you so distracted? And will it involve this car getting wrecked?
I chuckled.
Nah, it isn't superhero stuff. I'm in love with Amy.
A slow nod, and Dad changed lanes in time with the directions from my phone.
Finally realized that, did you?
I blinked repeatedly.
You knew. I didn't even know.
He snorted a bit.
Kid, I love you, but it's so obvious to anyone that's not you and Amy. You two get near each other, and it's like you have your own gravity. Pass me a Slim Jim, would you?
I passed him the Slim Jim.
But, like, how do I know if she loves me back?
He was having too much fun with this.
You don't. Right up until you say it, and she says it, it's all up in the air. And no, it doesn't get less scary. It means being vulnerable, and that's always going to be scary. You weren't afraid of Reva. You're not afraid to fight the Hiei. But this? Oh, we all get scared. Just like I was scared when I said it to your mum for the first time.
He didn't say anything else, really, until he asked me to find a Super 8 motel, and we pulled off for the night. Dad turned in early, and I hung out on the balcony, mustering up the courage to call her. I felt the sync power kick in, Reva making the adjustment to push my thought into action.
We're going to talk about that one late. Hey, Amy, how'd the game go?
Oh, it hasn't started yet. I loved the pictures. Georgia looks so beautiful. Hey, I can't talk long. Coach is rounding everyone up.
She said, speaking up as the sound of people in the background intensified.
Yeah, all right. Amy?
Why was this so hard?
Yes?
I love you.
I was looking up at the night sky, just praying I'd hear it back. There was silence for a moment, and then,
I know.
and click, she hung up. I just stared at the phone for a moment. I don't know what that, wait, did that woman just Han Solo me?